There's a lot that we don't talk about, sometimes due to embarrassment, fear, insecurities. We neglect discussions about the most common parts of our lives, things we all deal with, sometimes every day. But on the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast, together, we'll break all of those taboos and talk open and honest about shared experiences. Knowledgeable people relating things you felt but never put into words. Parenting, sex, fitness, energy, anything to connect you to your authentic self, unfiltered. Now, the Caffeinated Gypsy herself, a free spirit, world traveler with a passion for fitness and exploring topics that others might avoid. Hello, and welcome to the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast. I'm Stephanie Cotton, your host. Thank you all so much for being with me today. I'm excited to share with you what's going on with the new moon. That is going to be happening on December 26th at 10:06 a.m. So I'm going to give you all the updates on that and a few other astrological updates in today's podcast. And before we get to that, what's going on? What's new? Hopefully you guys are settling into this new Sagittarius energy. We moved into Sagittarius a couple of days ago, and Mercury came out of retrograde, which, thank goodness, we are still in that post-shadowy phase, but at least, Mercury is now going back to normal and doing its thing. So hopefully you guys are seeing a little bit of shift in the energy. I really like Sagittarius energy. I think it's a really fun season. Obviously, it's going to be different for everybody. It depends on what's in your chart, how you feel with this energy. So I always tell people, if you're starting to learn astrology or you're interested in astrology, as you move into seasons, like astrological seasons, just kind of keep notes on how you feel. This has been huge for me in understanding my own astrological kind of constitution, is taking note of how I feel during certain zodiac seasons. So for me personally, I have a ton of Sagittarius in my chart. My rising is Sagittarius, my moon is in Sagittarius. So I actually really like Sagittarius season. It sits really well with me. On the contrary, I have a lot of Aquarius in my chart, and then when we move into Aquarius season, I actually have a really hard time with that. So it's not necessarily like, if you're a Sagittarius, you're going to love Sagittarius season. There's a lot of other things that go into that. So I think it's always interesting if you just kind of keep note of how you feel during different zodiac seasons. And then as you go through the season the next year, then you're like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a good season for me, or maybe I need to do some things that help me kind of get through this season a little bit easier. And so for me personally, that's been huge in dealing with my own depression and things like that. I know that certain seasons trigger that more than others. So I started doing things to sort of prepare for that. So there's a lot of things you can do with astrological energy. And the first thing I always recommend is once you learn how you feel with it, then you can start being like, okay, maybe I'm going to use some crystals, or maybe I'm going to use, diet, or maybe I'm going to do some energy work techniques and things like that. So start paying attention to how you feel when you move into these different zodiac seasons. Speaking of coffee, did I mention coffee yet? The window's closed for the Sagittarius Coffee of the Month. If you're not familiar with the coffee, please head over to my website at caffeinatedgypsy.com, and you can learn all about my crystal charged coffee. We have a Zodiac Coffee of the Month subscription, and you can sign up for that up until the 23rd of each month. So once you sign up, you don't have to do it again, or you can always cancel anytime. There's not a commitment. You just have to give me 2 weeks notice so I can take the billing out. But each month there's a Zodiac coffee, and it's charged with crystals that help support that Zodiac season. So moving into this next season will be in Capricorn. So we're going to be doing a blend for you guys that is going to help you get through the holiday season. Yeah, and Capricorn energy. So that one's going to be really good. And then we always have the other coffees. We have Winter's Coming, which is a cardamom rose blend, which is my favorite right now. And then we have Ritual, which is designed for new moons, full moons, ritual work, and then our house blend. And all of those are charged with crystals. So if you want to check those out, you can go over to the website. Also, if you want to come hang out with us in our Patreon group, we would love to have you. You can join our Patreon either at Patreon, Caffeinated Gypsy, or you can go on my website and there is a link to Patreon. So come hang out with us. That's where you'll get all of the morning astro updates. I post a video in there, and then I also post exclusive podcasts just for Patreon members. We're actually working on one this week that is all about how to use your pendulum. So lots of fun to be had. All right, let's talk new moon. So I usually do not look at other people's astrological updates for things like this, because I like to sort of like feel my way into it and then read other people's. And so I did like everything, did all my notes for today, and then I went back and read a couple of other people's information on the new moon. And it's always interesting to me to see how other people interpret the energy. And so for somebody starting out in astrology, I always say, like, look at a lot of different things, because there's a lot of different ways you can interpret astrology. So the thing about the planets is they all have the characteristics are their characteristics. Like, they don't change. It's very finite, right? So like you can't change the characteristics. But what happens is we have aspects, which are how the planets interact with each other. And so everybody kind of has their own way of interpreting these. So I like to go back and just look at people that I like really trust in astrology and be like, oh yeah, okay. Like, yeah, I just like to kind of like double check things. And then sometimes I look at things and I'm like, that's an interesting way to interpret that. So if you're looking at, especially on Instagram, there's like tons of information, or if you're on social media at all, everybody posts something. I don't like to be like, oh, that's right or that's wrong. I just tell people, like, once you start to learn, like, start getting comfortable with what each planet does and see what feels right to you when other people interpret it. There's a lot of people that are talking about how good this new moon is. And I don't like to be good or bad with the moons, but a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this is such an expansive new moon because it's in Sagittarius. And if it was just Sagittarius, I would be like 100. Sagittarius is always a really good moon, just because it's a very expansive, it's ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is an energy that we tend to feel really good with. There is, though, an aspect that's happening with this. And so that's the thing about astrology is it's never straightforward and just going, oh, this is where, the zodiac sits. There's always some sort of aspect mixed in with that. And that's why I tell people, even with your own charts, get a reading done, because just because your sun sign's in Sagittarius doesn't mean you're going to have the same type of experience as somebody else that has a sun sign in Sagittarius, because you're going to have different aspects, meaning the planets are going to interact differently for you, because they were in different positions depending on where you were born, what year, the time, all of those things. And so it's the same with our chart of the day, is that it's very simple to look at it and go, oh, we have a new moon in Sagittarius, but then we have to kind of look at all the other things that are going on. And that's how the planets are communicating, because they're all kind of shooting energy at each other. And sometimes they blend really well together, and sometimes there's opposition. So one of the things that we have going on with this particular new moon is Mars is in opposition with Uranus. And this is one of the more challenging aspects that we have in astrology. And so this is going to cause a little bit of irritation. It's going to cause some friction. And so while we have this new moon in Sagittarius, which is a very benevolent energy, it's going to make us feel expansive, this Mars opposition Uranus is a very strong aspect. And so it's definitely going to be coming in. So what does that mean? Well, Mars is the planet that rules our anger, it's our drive, it's our action, it's all this fire. Sagittarius is also a fire, right? So when we put these two things together, we're looking at a lot of energy kind of percolating and bubbling up. With this opposition aspect with Uranus, Uranus is our rebel. So what I think we're going to really see with this new moon is things are going to kind of start to bubble up that we've kind of suppressed and held down. We've had a lot of time to pull shit up, right? We just came out of Mercury in retrograde, which was about, things coming to light, people coming back around. I don't know about you guys, but I had people come back and I was like, what is going on right now? And that's what happens with Mercury in retrograde. It kind of pulls things back around to be like, okay, have we dealt with this? We also just came out of Scorpio season, which is all about getting into those shadowy parts of ourselves and really starting to see like what's holding me back. What have I not dealt with? And so as these things have been coming to the surface, now we have this Mars opposition Uranus, which is basically taking all of that stuff that's been sitting below the surface, and all of a sudden, like, boom, it's coming out. So what you're going to see is explosion of anger, explosion of irritation. And this could come out in a lot of different ways. So you want to be really careful with that, because even though that stuff needs to come out, we want to make sure it's coming out in a constructive way. But anytime you have Mars with some sort of opposition like this, and you have Uranus, which is that rapid change, it's that rebel, you may start to feel very constricted and be like, I have to break free. So don't be surprised if one day you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is not working for me anymore. The key to this is finding a way to do this in a healthy, beneficial way. With the Sagittarius energy, Sagittarius is our last fiery energy at the end of our zodiac season. So we're getting ready to move into Capricorn after this, and then we're going to move into Aquarius, which is an air sign, and then we move into watery Pisces. So this is our last burst of fire as we're going through the zodiac wheel. So we're going to have a ton of fire behind us, and we're going to be like, I have to do all the things, right? If you already have a lot of Sagittarius in your chart, this is going to be even more amplified. You're already going to be like, I have to do all the things right this second. The thing about Sagittarius energy is it's always full of a ton of ideas, and there's a ton of momentum. It tends to burn out though. And so if you have all these things happening and you feel like maybe something's holding you back, you're going to probably feel a little bit more explosive. The same goes for other people. Other people could be more explosive. So don't be surprised if you're getting, these explosive outbursts from people. This can also lead to violence. This can lead to a lot of anger. So as you're feeling these things come up, you want to find some constructive ways to deal with this. So rather than having like a complete outburst or freaking out on somebody, this is where you have to kind of gain control and be like, okay, wait a second. What's actually happening? What's coming to light? Not that we want to push that stuff back down, because we absolutely don't, but we want to find a really healthy way to deal with this. So this could be just taking a time out, deep breaths, leaving the situation. Exercise is going to be really good for this. Any type of creative outlet's going to be really good for this, but we want to make sure we're finding a way to deal with this in a very healthy way. One of the other aspects that we have with this is the sun is quinsux with Uranus as well. So Uranus, it's always a lot of like nervous tension. So you're going to have a lot of probably nervousness, anxiety, that combined with that Mars energy, you're going to have probably just a hard time being relaxed. What I recommend for people is doing those things that you need to do to relax. So for me personally, I noticed a huge shift last night, and that's when this energy changed, and it didn't even dawn on me till this morning, but I couldn't sleep last night, and I was really, really restless. My mind was like racing, and I had taken like magnesium, and I had done all this stuff, and I was like, why can't I go to sleep? This is crazy. And then I woke up this morning and looked at everything, and I was like, oh, well, we got a lot of Uranus interacting today. So there's a lot of energy giving us this nervous tension. So things that you could do to help combat this would be just from like an herbal standpoint, magnesium is always really good. If you don't take magnesium, definitely do a Google search to make sure you're getting the right dosage, but magnesium helps calm the nervous system, and a lot of people are deficient in magnesium, so you could always look into magnesium. Valerian is another really good herb that you can use to help calm. Definitely, you guys do Google searches on this so you can get the correct dosages. These are just things that I use. Passion flower is another one. I make passion flower tea. This is really, really good for calming the nervous system. Meditation is huge, guys. I know that it's hard to meditate when you have a ton of anxiety, but this is when you need to meditate the most. Deep breathing exercises. I know it's a total cliche, but seriously, it helps relax your whole entire nervous system. So taking even just 5 minutes and doing really nice, slow and controlled deep breaths can really, really help your anxiety. And then this is also normally during the new moon, our energy levels wane. We tend to be a little bit slower and tired, but this is actually a new moon where it would be good to move your body just to kind of help combat some of this fiery energy. So those are some things that you can do to really help calm your nervous system, because it's a lot of energy right now. Sagittarius season is I really like Sagittarius, and I think you guys are going to find as I mentioned before, as you start noticing how you feel during these seasons. But Sagittarius is a season where you get to get a lot of stuff done. But I want you to kind of keep in mind, as we're going into Sagittarius and we have this Mars opposition, Uranus this week, this could be carrying over into holiday season with Thanksgiving. So if you're going to be around your family or a lot of people that maybe you have some old wounds with, this could be something that comes up. So knowing this, make sure you sort of have your things in place, like, okay, if I get triggered, what am I going to do? So especially if you have past trauma with your family or things like that, have a plan in place for what you're going to do if you get triggered, because there's a very good chance that you could be triggered during this season. But Sagittarius season overall is going to give you this sort of fire to like start setting up what you want to do for the new year. Always with the new moon, this is a time for us to set these goals. These are the goals that are going to take us into our next new moon and our solar eclipse in December, which is on December 26th. So this is the last kind of like big, like, whew, all right, let's set some goals. What do I need to do? And really, when we're looking at Sagittarius energy, it's like, what kind of goals can I set for this? Well, this is your goals you want to set around, like, what's your passion? How can you expand yourself? Higher learning, travel, spirituality. These are all things that we want to set goals around. This is very, very supported during this season. So really good time if you're like thinking about like taking a class, or you're thinking about traveling, or you're thinking about, maybe you want to study astrology or tarot or crystals or whatever. This is a good time to set goals around those things. Also too, if you have a business that is anywhere around all this kind of spirituality, higher learning, travel, anything like that, it's a really good time to set goals for your business as well. So one of the other things I want to mention before we finish up today is that Venus has moved into Capricorn. And so we just came out of Sagittarius and Venus, which is a ton of fun. But now what you're going to find is Capricorn adds a little bit of a seriousness to your relationships. So Venus is what rules relationships. So as we're going into Capricorn, it's going to be interesting that we're moving out of this like fun, fiery to a very serious energy. So it's going to bring some seriousness to your relationship. So you may feel a little bit more maybe dedicated to your relationships. Maybe you want to work on your relationships a little bit more. It's not quite as fiery as we saw with Sagittarius. Now we're really like, okay, how can I make this work? What can I do to better this relationship in a very serious and concrete way? So we got a lot of stuff going on astrologically right now, but I think it's all really good. Coming out of, the last few months where we've done a lot of work with all this Scorpio, I think Sagittarius is a nice welcome change to lighten things up and really start to expand ourselves and figure out like, what's the plan for next year? Because we've only got 5 weeks left in this year. So what's the plan for next year? How can you continue this growth that you've had from this year and carried on to the next year? So lots of good stuff happening with this new moon. Just be really mindful of this Mars opposition Uranus. And don't forget to set those intentions. This is a great time to do your new moon rituals. Write those intentions down. When you write them down, they become that much stronger. Great time to do a coffee ritual. If you are not familiar with a coffee ritual, go check out my Instagram TV. I did a 5-minute coffee ritual on there a few weeks ago, but you can use that in an expanded version. Anytime you're working with coffee, it's ruled by Mars. So you're putting a lot of energy into what you're doing. So you can literally like sip your coffee and write your goals and really focus on all that Mars energy, which we have a ton of right now, going into your goals. So this is a really powerful way to really anchor in those goals that you're setting with this new moon. So, all right, you guys, that's going to be it for today. Until the next one. Bye.